ESPN put out a phenomenal story on Belichick behind the scenes and his interview with the Falcons and Arthur Blank, who's great friends with Robert Kraft. And there's conflicting reports in there that Kraft basically said, don't hire him because you want a family guy as your head coach, and this guy's going to be a little bit standoffish because he's Bill Belichick. And then the Patriots are trying as hard to push back on that. It's a really great piece. But it had me moving to the Bears and how Bill Belichick does not fit Chicago at all. But it got me thinking this morning about, like, the one thing that Ryan Poles has done this offseason that I think you can look at sideways is keeping Matt Eberflus. You had a chance to align the head coach with the quarterback and start fresh, and he chose not to do that. And just reading that story and thinking about Belichick, and more specifically Jim Harbaugh, who's pretty damn good at developing quarterbacks and getting people to win in different ways.
Right.
The staff is different. Shane Waldron is here, and hopefully he'll be great and all those things. But I do wonder, at least a little bit, if Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren are going to regret the decision. I know he's got a different look, and he's got an improved coaching staff, and he's got a new running back, and he's got a new tight end, and he's got a new wide receiver. It's going to be hard to mess this up. But I also wonder, like, you had a chance to, yes, we have him, but we could have him, which is what you did at quarterback. You didn't do that with your head coach.
So I get the questions, and obviously, what are we? Maybe 8 months from now, we're going to be analyzing that pretty hard on that decision. I still feel like it was too soon. You look at this head coaching cycle. Yes, you could say Jim Harbaugh, okay, but you had guys that could walk around Indianapolis at the NFL Combine and blend in with you and me.
Sure.
That got hired. Okay, Brian Callahan.
Nobody was talking about Raheem Morris as.
I actually liked Raheem Morris.
I'm not saying dislike or not like, but it wasn't like.
But Mike McDonald in Seattle. The point is that this all-time head coaching availability cycle didn't really finish that way. And even in the situation of Jim Harbaugh, would you feel better right now? Just try to put yourself in that situation. Jim Harbaugh's the head coach. Greg Roman's the offensive coordinator. But you still got rid of Justin Fields, even though we spent months talking about how Greg Roman would fit Justin Fields. Now Greg Roman, who has now failed in the NFL, and they let go in Baltimore, is in charge of developing Caleb Williams, along with Jim Harbaugh. And you completely now have to restart over on defense. Not necessarily with the talent, but with whatever coach and scheme that you're bringing in. Is that a better situation than what Poles and Flus have put together where, yes, you did rebuild the offensive staff, but you made some pretty impressive hires on that side of the ball, and then you also basically haven't touched your defense for a good reason because the coaching's in place. That's the one area that Flus did make a ton of progress last year. You know Caleb Williams is going to have one of the better defenses to work with here, where if you had restarted that, you don't know that. Restarting a whole coaching staff on that side of the ball when it wasn't needed is a very, very dangerous thing to do. So when I think about that, it seemed like it was too soon with the way that they finished last year.
I agree with you.
And there's no guarantee you would have gotten Harbaugh.
Well, you could.
In fact, I don't think they would have gotten Harbaugh. I don't think McCaskey wanted Harbaugh.
Hold on. Two things, and then take over Kirk Bragg. But look. Yes, too soon. Would have been totally unfair. You're tearing down, and the Bears did get better as the season went along. You also did have a lot of dysfunction on that staff. But
Harbaugh got to hire his GM there, too. Which
sure.
is one of the reasons why I don't think the Bears and Harbaugh would have been a fit.
Perhaps not. But as far as the too soon thing goes, you have to – yes, it would have been, in quote-unquote, too soon, but you were in a situation where you're making a major change at the top of your organization as far as the quarterback is concerned. So even though it would have been unfair, you had an opportunity to do the alignment that the Bears have never done. Would have been unfair, too soon. Flus, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a chance to go into year 3, but under the circumstances that they were in, it's an aggressive, bold, believe in Flus move when you could have hired somebody who's had a lot more success doing it.
But who's your somebody besides Harbaugh?
Right, because
I don't think Harbaugh's coming here.
Right, because I think the most
they would have known that.
I don't agree. You're telling me that Jim Harbaugh could come back to Chicago to coach the number one overall consensus quarterback coming out that people are comparing that Nick just compared to Luck but higher. You're telling me he's saying no to that?
It's the most fair argument though, because you can't guarantee he would have came here. That's the point.
Yeah.
Because as Gary Ross was pointing out in the chat, Ryan Poles not really in the business of firing himself because Jim Harbaugh likes to pick his own groceries. And then B, you would have had to outspend the Chargers to get Harbaugh.
Could have afforded the money, and if he won't work for Ryan Poles, then he's out.
But as I said here a minute ago,
I don't even like
Caleb Williams and the separate expectations versus the team and the quarterback, the decision to keep Matt Eberflus has put him directly on Front Street for this season. 100%, because
hang on. I'm sorry. I got to go backwards for a second. I apologize for interrupting you, Greg, but that's a different conversation. I do want to hit on it, but I want to go back to what you just said though about the quarterback, because it is a decent argument. Like Harbaugh could have had Caleb Williams. Harbaugh, whether you believe him or not, is on record saying that J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, and he's got to be lying.
Honestly,
he's got.
I don't know.
He has to be lying.
He may have been sitting here wanting to draft J.J. McCarthy. Trade back, get the haul. I'm being serious right now. Trade back, get the haul, draft J.J. McCarthy. I feel like would have been seriously on the table.
Right.
And also the other thing you're underestimating is most coaches hate rookie quarterbacks.
Okay, but Jim Harbaugh's crazy, but he's not a dummy.
But listen to my next thing here. Most coaches don't like dealing with rookie quarterbacks. Maybe Caleb Williams is the exception to that. But he went to the Chargers. He's got Justin Herbert to work with.
Right.
Look, I'm thinking he would have preferred to have that veteran guy you already know who Justin Herbert is than starting over with a rookie.
But listen, I used Harbaugh because he was the biggest name out there that I think the Bears could have gotten, and I do think that Jim Harbaugh would have come around on Caleb over J.J. McCarthy. But even regardless of any of that.
I guess what I'm trying to get through, though, is we don't know what the Bears knew at the time. And I'm saying try to look at this through the lens of they're not hiring Belichick for all the reasons that were listed in this ESPN story today where he didn't get a job. That's done. He didn't get a job. They're not going to hire Belichick, and they're not going to get Harbaugh. If you knew that going into it, are you 100% still firing Matt Eberflus? Because that very well may have been the situation when they met for 48 hours and they were in that room with Kevin Warren and George McCaskey. They may have known those two things. And you're still going to fire Matt Eberflus blind, not knowing who you're going to end up with?
Right. It's the same as when the Bears...
I would... Okay, listen. They're in the position of knowing a lot more than obviously I know. But could you have gone out and gotten Mike Vrabel?
No one else did.
No one else did. That's fine, but he was there. Would you rather have Mike Vrabel?
Isn't that the same thing as Eberflus?
No.
Except you're restarting the defense. He's the defensive coach.
So you have a lot more faith in the Flus.
I have faith in Poles. I have faith in that. I'm not denying what you're saying and that it is the most controversial move of the offseason. I think there is truth to that. But I also think it honestly would have been more controversial to fire him and start over. Because, look, and Steven said something in our pre-show meeting that was interesting. I think, or someone said it. Like, do you have faith that Matt Eberflus is going to win a Super Bowl? Well, here's my question to you. When Bill Belichick was 6-10 and 7-9 his first 2 years in Cleveland, who had faith in him winning 6 Super Bowls?
Sure.
Or 5, I guess it was with the Patriots.
Sure.
Okay, when Pete Carroll was with the New York Jets and lasted one season, went 6-10. And even when he went to New England and went 10-6, 9-7, then ended up losing his job later, even when he's in Seattle, goes 7-9 in back-to-back years to start those first 2 seasons in Seattle. Did anyone have faith that Pete Carroll was going to... It wasn't until he got his quarterback. And Belichick got his quarterback. And Eberflus has a good chance to get his quarterback here.
So, but let's talk about can we outline the Flus here? He He hired a defensive coordinator that had to be fired in some really weird way. He hired an offensive coordinator who lasted 2 years. Now, granted, there's a ton of turnover, but who has just landed in Las Vegas, but so for some reason couldn't work out with him. You had a running backs coach that had to be fired in the middle of the season. You had a lot of games. The Bears had how many games that they should have won last year? Could have easily been an 8-win team, 9-win team, even 10-win team. Are we really going to sit here and say that after this year, it is likely that Matt Eberflus is the Bears head coach and he's going to get and by the way that he's going to eventually get a contract extension? Would you bet on that?
Yes, I would. Because we all sit here for all the reasons, and we just had Nick Wright on the show taking the over on 8.5 wins. And if they get to even 8 wins, I don't think they're firing him. And I understand he's made mistakes.
Yeah.
But Nick Saban was Belichick's defensive coordinator in Cleveland, and it still didn't work out. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that this doesn't always go smoothly for first-time head coaches right away, and it's a different game when you have your quarterback.
Right.
And it's working out for these now. And by the way, there's another name we're going to mention. Pete Carroll was available to hire.
I love Pete Carroll.
No one hired Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel.
I threw that out.
So to your point, though, of they shouldn't, if they win 8 games, they're not going to fire Matt Eberflus. My contention is they shouldn't. You made this decision. You didn't, reset the head coach with the quarterback. Now give this at minimum 2 years. You cannot, and that's where this whole point of expectation on this season comes into play. Fans are going to have a certain expectation. I get it. I want them to make the playoffs. I think they can make the playoffs. But if they don't overreact and let this play out for a minimum of 2 years. To me, that is the healthy approach to letting this have a chance, what they've just built here. You're rolling the dice with Matt Eberflus. Fine. I agree with you. If you had gotten rid of him, it would have only had been in the guarantee that you're getting Jim Harbaugh, which wasn't a guarantee. Same thing with getting rid of Justin Fields, only for Caleb Williams, nobody else. That was something we all said here on this show.
Yep.
So if you're keeping Matt Eberflus, fine, but he is directly on Front Street now to make this work, make the other side of the ball's coaching staff work. You brought in a whole new offensive coaching staff. It clearly didn't work out with the last offensive coaching staff. Those are the biggest question marks. The personnel looks right. Ryan Poles seems right. This coaching staff still is a huge question mark. To your point about situational football, never mind all the coaches that had to get fired. The situational football decision-making in this season, from the Denver game early in the season to the Browns game at the end of the season, where he's got Justin Jones in coverage on a tight end to lose the game. You said, Matt Eberflus, that you were involved in offensive decisions on short yardage and game, money on the table time decisions, and you failed at those time and again. So how much are you going to have an input now with Shane Waldron calling plays on those situational moments on short down and distance? Matt Eberflus has a lot to prove this year to all of us as Bears fans and people that cover the team, in my opinion.
And GMs always get 2 coaches, and Poles didn't have to get rid of him now. I think he's built up enough juice where if things go sideways this year, he'll get to rework the coaching staff and have the 9 picks they have next year.
And I agree with you. The margin of error is bigger now. Your quarterback theoretically is better, so your margin of error for your team should be bigger, where you can make some mistakes even as a coach and still be able to win games.
But I'm where I was last year with this conversation. It was going to take a catastrophic collapse for them to fire the head coach last year. And guess what? It almost happened.
It was
none of us really saw that coming, but they were terrible to start the year. The defense was horrible. The quarterback was regressing. They had their defensive coordinator resign in disgrace early on in the season.
Taylor Swift was dancing on our grave.
The Chiefs game was an absolute embarrassment. And guess what? He survived all that. And that is the one thing that I don't think.
Truly amazingly.
I don't think Bears fans give him enough credit for, that And he is a huge reason for that. Matt Eberflus is a huge reason for that. And their players are on record, including our guy Cole Kmet, talking about that not only in hindsight, but while this was all playing out during this season.
Your starting quarterback got hurt.
And
consistent Flus.
So that's a real thing that matters that he dug out of that. Now, I am agreeing with you guys. You got to keep it going here. But same thing. We're looking at better quarterback play this year, better offensive overall hope, I think, right now. A defense that did dig out of that terrible start and finished the year with many numbers suggesting they were a top 5 defense in the second half of the season.
Yep.
And so that all adds up to me as unlikely as catastrophic failure was last season, which almost happened but in the end didn't. It's even less likely to happen this year. So it almost seems like a useless conversation because with everything where things are headed here, I just don't envision a scenario in which they're going to fall so short of expectations that they're like, we got to fire the coach and reset all these coaches again.
To that point, if he does get fired because it went sideways, that means he really is bad.
Really bad.
Really bad.
We all silly like the mayor.